Well, good morning from the West Coast. Good afternoon to the East Coast and the central parts of the country. Thanks for joining us for a webinar sponsored by Nylas and Sullivan on how first-party communication data drives digital customer engagement in the era of privacy. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping reminders. As is common, the webinar is being recorded and will be made available to be able to watch after the live session. Also, at any time during the webinar, please feel free to submit questions in the Q&A function. We have allocated time at the end of the webinar to hopefully answer as many questions as we can, although I know both Mike and Pavel are chomping at the bit with all sorts of wonderful information. So we'll see how things go. So let's dive right into it. Before we really get down to the security thing, we wanted to start in terms of just a brief overview of the state of the market, especially when it comes to business communications and as delivered by communication platforms as a service. As Nylas has talked with our customers and as we've worked with Frost & Sullivan on an upcoming white paper, we actually see there are three major challenges that our customers, as well as others in the market, encounter. The first has been the radical change in omnichannel behavior by all of our users and customers. I mean, this has been evolving rapidly, but now customers and users expect to be able to use the device of their choosing at the time of their choosing to interact with their brand, their favorite brands and their companies. And we all need to be able to accommodate that. Second, and at an even more structural layer, is the significant change in privacy regulations. And in many ways, this is what's directly impacting today's webinar. And we'll get into it in much more detail later on. But lastly, when it comes to CPaaS platforms, is the restriction or the constraint that many customers still encounter, where CPaaS or first generation CPaaS really focused on one-way communication, notifications, and the like. And there's really a need to get beyond that to have a much richer experience. When we look at these challenges, what really pops out is the need for first party almost across the board. First party engagement, first party data, and first party experience, and the need to be able to support and invest in those. We take a step back so that everybody, so we can level set. First party data is information that companies collect directly from their customers and users. Unlike third-party data, which is not only passive, but increasingly hard to come by, first-party data can be leveraged by innovative product teams to deliver powerful, innovative, revenue-generating experiences. And I'm pleased to have with us today two great speakers to focus on how first-party communication data can drive digital experience, given these privacy concerns. Michael Bradenburg is an industry analyst with Frost & Sullivan. He covers infrastructure and unified communications and collaboration as part of the Information and Communications Technology Group. Michael leverages his significant experience in market research and competitive analysis, as well as an IT practitioner, to identify emerging market trends, competitive threats, and growth opportunities across the enterprise communication market. Most pertinent to our webinar today is that Michael is the lead analyst at Frost & Sullivan for CPaaS, that is Communication Platforms as a Service. So thank you, Michael, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, David, for having me.
Pavel Sandoval is a senior technical product marketing manager at Nylas, supporting products that enable developers to create valuable communication experiences with platform intelligence and APIs. He's responsible for understanding the CPaaS market, as well as top trends to inform product development and to ensure Nylast's commitment to data privacy and developer experience that really deliver on the challenges businesses face today. Pavel, thanks for joining us as well.
Yeah, excited to be here with both of you.
And I'm David Bayer, and I lead the product marketing team at Nylas. So, Pavel, let me turn to you first. You know, it's been clear from the results of a survey that Nylas recently ran on the CPaaS market that even in today's macroeconomic climate, where companies are trying to balance revenue with operational savings, and while at the same time reducing risk, that omni-channel connectivity remains top of mind for business and technology leaders. But the question to you is, what makes omni-channel communications pertinent to first-party data? And when we focus on that, are all platforms and implementations basically the same, or are there real differences?
Yes, of course, David. So yeah, I definitely want to start off with the first-party data point. So as you mentioned, right, it's first-party data really comes down to collecting consumer information directly, right? And so a lot of that, especially for enterprises, if they're looking for, enterprise data management and a lot of the data privacy and regulation changes, it has to be done in a way that is authenticated and secure at scale. And so we found that a lot of customers as a whole have found that omni-channel communications, so particular channels such as email, SMS, hold a large amount of first-party data that is very rich and valuable, and that connecting into those channels in a way that is secure and authenticated enables enterprises to leverage that data at scale with consumer trust in mind, and with the permission. And in terms of the second point, platforms and implementations are not all the same. And that is actually what is quite difficult, is just even within one channel. Let's take email. Every email service provider, if you're looking at Gmail, Outlook, Exchange, across, or Yahoo, or other providers globally, it's actually very hard to integrate it, each one in a consistent and structured manner, which makes accessing that first-party data actually quite difficult and cumbersome.
Cool, thank you for that. Michael, you guys have been doing research for a while, but as you and your team at Frost & Sullivan talk with clients and really drive into the market, where do you see the market moving, and how are companies leveraging different CPaaS channels?
That's a great question. I mean, and I have to say, the CPaaS market has probably been the most interesting market I've had to, I've started following in my 10 years here at Frost. And I want to frame it though, like pre-pandemic and, post or mid or wherever we are now. Before, when we talked about CPaaS, it was really tied to whenever we saw a business that was beginning their digital transformation journey, it was really tied to, okay, there's going to be a communications transformation that happens along with that. And that was, before 2020, that was a slow and methodical process, to digitally transform their business processes and workflows and really think it out. And then the pandemic hit, and nearly every organization you can think of needed to digitally transform and radically adopt new business processes. In some cases, their entire business model depended on it to survive. And there was a rapid push to digital things. You see this in curbside pickups and a lot of these new processes that, because of lockdowns and other limitations, you couldn't go in the store. So to keep running, a retailer had to pivot to those processes. Fortunately, CPaaS was there and provided a really quick tactical response to these workflow and these channel issues. Across industries and vertical markets, developers are solving these challenges in like hours or days instead of the weeks and months we might have seen before the pandemic. And it's really thanks to CPaaS and programmable communication solutions.
So, good.
As I say, today, as you kind of see here, we're seeing the impact when we talk to IT decision makers. First, there's a really high level of awareness around APIs and programmable communications. I think the number is greater than 3/4 of our respondents, had a level of awareness of CPaaS, which I found, compelling and high. Of those, it's also really clear that CPaaS is bigger than just SMS. Large majorities of the folks that responded are already incorporating or plan to kind of add all their channels, including email, social media, voice, and video into those business workflows. So it might have been a tactical, response in the beginning and just to send a notification, but it is moving bigger than that.
So as you talk to companies, do you find that there are still many companies that are trying to take a channel by channel approach, or are you seeing an increasing push to really leveraging a form of universal connectivity?
I believe so. And I guess I'll blame the kind of the extended duration of the pandemic on that. It's clear in this space that the pandemic accelerated this move digital. But the extended duration of it is kind of keeping companies in tactical mode that I kind of described, and kind of adding, channel by channel mode as needed to support, a required business workflow. However, I think over time, many businesses will look to right-size platforms. They may be using multiple platforms. They'll figure out how to kind of consolidate it, really determine how CPaaS and the various communication channels are going to fit into their strategy, and I think that a holistic or a universal platform will be favored in those cases once they kind of build it, cook it into their strategy.
Okay, well, I think where we're about to go now, which is to the heart of the matter, probably is we'll speak directly to that as well, because as probably most of our participants know, we're living through turbulent times in multiple ways, but in particular when it actually comes to privacy. And it's kind of interesting. I was thinking about this last night that some of us cut our eye teeth back when GDPR was really both being proposed and then implemented back in 2018. Required major infrastructure shifts, but didn't necessarily, and a lot of opt-in capabilities, but was not as impactful here in North America. But the drive to protect privacy and to respect it has really taken on steam, and both Apple as well as Google are putting in place policies that significantly enhance the level of privacy, but also at the same time deprecate the usefulness of cookies and other third-party data collection mechanisms. And you can see, the impact of that, just in some of the data that we have here in terms of what AT&T was actually seeing. But all of us, are facing this, and in many ways, it's almost an existential challenge to some of the business practices and business processes that we've come to rely on the internet. So, Michael, let me turn back to you again. So, taking that into account, this radical restructuring of privacy, data ownership, and data control, how do you see companies approaching data intelligence with this shift in the regulatory landscape? And because it seems that some companies are still trying to figure out and build a first-party data strategy. So where are things and how are people approaching this?
Yeah, I think it's been a rocky road to navigate it. just to kind of level set, I mean, you have kind of conflicting interests. First, you have your customers that have now had a taste of digital interactions, and they want those deeper, richer interactions, with your business, as you said, on their preferred channel at their preferred time. These customers actually have pretty conflicting expectations. They expect the brands that they support to know them and understand them. I mean, let's pick an example. When a customer calls in or starts a chat, the expectation is that agent should already know that their flight is delayed or their package hasn't been delivered yet, and be ready, to proactively serve that customer. That's just expected today. However, there is also the expectation that the business will treat their information with care. I'm sure we've all been creeped out when a product you're, looking at on a shopping site appears on, as an ad on a social media site. And, a lot of the things, you mentioned, I think are meant to address kind of, I'd say not necessarily the bad actors, but the uncomfortableness of where your data is going through and long term. So, on the flip side of that is the regulatory piece. I mean, besides being diligent with protecting customer information, the requirements for each region you operate, the business operates in, could be vastly different. As you mentioned, GDPR, less so, here in the States. If you don't find that right balance or happen to miss, there are penalties. You can face anything from just having your interactions being flagged as spam because you didn't set up an SMS campaign, or you could be fined for not properly protecting customer information. So I think companies certainly are struggling with how to navigate the current climate.
Definitely. So maybe we can talk a little bit now about what they can take advantage of from a CPaaS perspective. And Pavel, I'm going to switch over to you right now, if you don't mind. The interesting thing is that as Michael was talking, I was in the e-discovery market, Michael, when GDPR was coming to play. So I am intimately familiar with how non-trivial some of those penalties can be. But at the same time, it was always, when we deal with documents and communication, I think all of us, whether coming from a text analytic or an NLP background or a communications background, we always assumed that there was critical business data that we could leverage. And yet it's been really difficult to access that data in an intelligent way. So Pavel, how does Nylas approach this? I mean, how does Nylas identify and extract data? And then, taking that one step beyond, if we can do that, how can companies use that intelligence, right, to address some of the concerns that Michael was pointing out?
Right, of course. So I think I'd just first and foremost want to start that, really Nylas approaches this from, a data protection and privacy standpoint. So by providing universal connectivity, let's just take one communication provider as an example with Google. We really take our customers through that express security review process to ensure that they are leveraging the information in a compliant way and expressing and sharing with their end consumers that they are providing access and willingly wanting to, share data with the brands they're working with, right? And so I think that's first and foremost, because then that allows everything else proceeding from that to be of value and scalable for the brands. So now, by providing that universal connectivity through communication channels, really key thing here is there's two things: is structuring the information and also filtering it. So what I mean by structuring is, every single communication provider, traditionally brands would integrate, through single API points, and the data comes out structured in different manners, right? And so it's a lot of, data maintenance, data engineering to provide structure that information for uses and applications. And so again, we providing that universal connection point, the information is structured in a consistent manner across the board. Secondarily, in terms of filtering the information, although you could get access to the communication channel feed, there's a lot of information held. Just again, taking an example of just email, there's a lot of noise around the data, right? Even though it may be structured, not all of it is immediately relevant and ready to operationalize within a particular use case. So we've really taken the additional step and final mile of filtering the information in particular industries to find entities of value that really drive operational value. And so I'll take an example here on the slide above. With travel, we found that there are particular, within email, right? Let's take travel as an example. Customers purchase across vendors, right? There's no real, centrality in travel, and so they engage in excursions, experiences, dining reservations across vendors as a whole, right? And across channels. And so by enabling, being able to extract the information across channels, filtering out particular things that are important, like flight tracking information, reservations, time changes, companies can really use that to drive, personalization in that trip management experience in their application. And also as well, other cases such as, pricing optimization, promotional assortment, and things of that sort. So definitely it opens up quite a large amount of use cases as a whole.
Yeah, I think I think one of the other things is, I've spent a long time in kind of like this ETL and NLP market. I think the ability that Nylas is bringing here for out of the box experience, that is by having industry standard parser sets, really allows people to accelerate their time to value and their deployment. So it's always been one of those missing pieces in that market that hopefully we're trying to get beyond. So let's continue to move along here. Michael, with the data, right? I mean, what's kind of interesting is, as Pavel's been talking about this, there's within an omni-channel experience, it's not just email, it's other communication channels as well that not only can be bidirectional and synchronized into an application's experience, but from which a CPaaS platform such as Nylas can extract critical business information. How have you seen this impacting communication experiences in the market? Because just one last, other part of that question is that, very often it seems as if most of those experiences remain transactional. I mean, would you agree, or do you see people extending how they use this information?
No, I absolutely do see, I think the last 10 years of the CPaaS market has been, completely focused on the transactional nature of that, which is, on one hand, it serves as that toolbox and a set of tools to bring it to quickly deliver that, and let you overlay it on top of your legacy solutions and build on it. But I do think it does vary by like vertical and specific workflows. Today, kind of as you mentioned, a lot of the experiences still really fall into that notification mode. And that one-way push of information, like an order status, reminders, or a marketing campaign. I think it's the idea of two-way communications or really creating a conversation is an emerging thought within the market, and it's kind of good to see providers like Nylas that are actually kind of pushing that envelope forward and making for more interactive use cases or workflows. And I think it will ultimately go even farther into the customer data platform territory of really being that trusted source of customer information. It's a kind of what it almost goes back to like why CPaaS and why why go down this road rather than trying to build it yourself. folks like Nylas have all of the data scientists and the integration experts and staff that supports, infrastructure on a global scale. And it can parse out, really do the work to parse out the things that Pavel mentioned, that and as well as all of those regulatory requirements, and keep on top of that. And really the goal is to, with the CPaaS is, to take all of that intelligence and capabilities and make it a single API call for, a business developer to just consume that, on demand. So I do see the, capabilities and strength of the CPaaS market expanding.
Cool. Hey, Pavel, maybe, as the market expands, it takes advantage of some of these capabilities in a secure fashion and really focusing on first-party data, since the third-party data, right, is depreciated, shall we say, being deprecated increasingly. Can you add any insight into additional journeys or use cases that you see ripe for automation or personalization, leveraging that first-party data?
Yes, of course. So, I think, when we, commissioned this global survey, we found that, the number one, destination for this customer data was to, customer experience. And really that was what was driving user engagement was, complete customer information for digital account management. So in terms of use cases, let me ground it quickly into maybe one or two industry examples. So, in retail, we found that, digital account management typically centers around universal order management. So where, what have I shipped? What's coming to me? What's the SKU number? What's the item number? What have I purchased across other vendors? So really having that universal view across the board, which is critical for retail, especially as they have so many wholesale partners to provide their customers with that personalized experience across the brands that they purchase at their favorite retailer. However, the same principle really applies in other industries as well. We found a few customers in the shipping and logistics industry as well, where let's say it's a third-party logistics firm and they're providing their shippers and carriers with that digital account management experience. So they're looking at, what shipments are coming in inbound, what's the quantity amount, where is it going, what's the weight, a lot of key pieces of information to help them drive network optimization and really personalize their experience for their carriers and shippers. And so we've seen that, that trend go across the board, right? Product teams and industries are really trying to drive a more personalized, digital account management experience in their applications and web applications as well. And that's been very profound. And I think it's probably the one place that's most profound for automation as a whole.
Cool. Michael, anything else that you'd like to add at this point?
Oh, I think it's kind of touching on that, those use cases. It's kind of important to remember that I hate to do pre and post pandemic yet, but if you think about the digital workflows and business processes that came about, curbside pickup, and a lot of the, it's the one is my go-to on that, and those aren't going away. I think retailers, have decided, customers have decided that's a more convenient way to shop for them rather than going into the store or waiting for, an order to ship. And so there's, some of them, vaccine notifications, things like that are going to go away kind of in this post-pandemic, world. But those business processes are going to stick around, and those features, what was a response is now a feature of that store. So this isn't like, okay, something we need to like quick fix until we get through it. It's going to be a part of the business, and I think that's an important consideration for businesses when they're looking at engaging with a platform like this. Is this something that's temporary, or is it going to be long lasting? And I think that ultimately reflects on what affects your communication strategy overall.
Yeah, well, definitely. Implementing a CPaaS platform really drives ultimately to unified digital experience. I mean, I think we've been touching on each of these core pillars today from a privacy and a first-party data perspective. But in many ways, the opening up of communications across channels that then provides companies the opportunity to access this critical first-party data that they can then use, right? Whether it's to automate workflows, whether it's to create additional data services, or, as we've seen in many companies, to really focus on that user-centric experience and personalization. For instance, in some of the use cases that Pavel talked about, at the end of the day, that's really allowing them to build complete customer journeys, focusing on the metrics that really matter to them. And I think that you're right, that as people really do focus on the platform capabilities and the need that they have for this first-party data to get past the loss of third-party data, we'll see that more and more. So that'd be great. What I want to mention to everybody is that there will be a new white paper written by Frost & Sullivan, focused on redefining these customer journeys with next generation CPaaS, that will be available in mid-July. Based upon your participation in this webinar, we will send that to you directly. And but however, if there are additional members of your organizations who would find value in this white paper, please just send us a note to marketing@nylus.com. There are a couple of questions, and I know that we were moving along there through the slides, but wanted to definitely make sure that we had times to answer these. So the first question was, Michael, somebody was actually looking really closely at your chart. And they were intrigued by your observation on the continued prevalence of email. And they're wondering whether you see this continuing and what actually accounts for its surprising resilience, especially given all the other channels that are now available.
Good question. I think my analyst take on email is it's probably the most federated solution, communications channel that's out there today. You can reach anyone if you know their email address, and you don't have to remember which country code they're in or anything like that. So I think that level of federation is part in the resiliency. It's also probably a bit generational. I'll put myself in the group that had email long before he wrote his first SMS message, and that goes to the what is the customer's preferred channel. And I think kind of the final piece on is teeing off of Pavel's comments. It's almost a legacy channel. It's both a current and a legacy channel for engagement, because a lot of these legacy systems, the flight reservation systems, all leverage email to send you a confirmation and all of that. So it's the great repository, if you will, of all that information, and a really, instead of trying to connect to each one of these platforms, for a given vertical or a given solution, that email it can form. If you get the formatting right, can serve as that bridge.
Cool. Pavel, I have a question for you from our participants. Somebody is mentioning here that when it comes to personalization, that can occur both in terms of how communication is embedded within an application, but also then in terms of the experience, right? And how their preferences can inform what's delivered to them. So what they're then asking after that is, where do you see personalization from first party data most commonly being implemented? And is it, and I'll extend this, is it both of those aspects that are being taken advantage of, or is it moving one or the other?
Yeah, so I think the question being asked definitely, I love it. I think it's definitely expanding the definition of what we consider personalization, right? So, I'll start on the first part, right? By having that universal connectivity and being able to embed that communication channel and having that first party experience, you are allowing your customer to have a very, direct and authenticated experience on their communication channel of choice, right? For example, let's say, I'll ground it again in travel. Let's say you're working, you're an OTA, an online travel agency, and you're inquiring about a package that you bought, right? If you go on the application and let's say all your email service thread is automatically embedded within the application, immediately when you log into the application, it's providing you a personalized experience, right? I think it's touched a little bit when Mike talked earlier, which is the expectation is that the agent or the brand immediately knows my history, my engagement, and how I'm engaging, right? And so by providing that embedded experience, it immediately is personalized. And we found that typically a lot of companies value that through increase in net promoter score and additional quicker time to let's say in travel rebooking or improving gross booking value as a whole. So there's definitely that pillar. I think the second pillar, yes, I think is what we probably talked a little bit earlier, which is probably the most commonly defined version of personalization, which is now that, let's say, let's again, it's an online travel agency, what flight I booked, what hotel I'm staying at, and the car rental that I'm picking up. Now, typically, let's say, oh, I love going to, let's say I'm living in Los Angeles, I love going to Cabo, and I always love getting a convertible sports car while I'm there, right? And so then now the brand knows, oh, I know what, potential future trips they like to book, or let's say, or if they're booking a trip to another city, I know that they love convertible, so I'd love to extend them a promotion from one of the car brand partners that I have for convertibles. So overall, as a whole, there really is two sides again, is allowing brands to immediately personalize experience based on how they've communicated with the brand, but also the express consumer intent and behavior that they've expressed, and being able to surprise and delight, let's say in travel, their guests with things that are pertinent and relevant to their behavior.
Cool. So Michael, we're going to close with the last question to you. We're going to close out at the 40-minute slot here. And actually, this goes back to some of what both you and Pavel were talking about, which is really, privacy safeguards. And our participant is asking, what safeguards do you, from your analyst position as you talk to companies, but what do you or would you recommend for companies or customers so that they can create trusted relationships that really, because it's the trusted relationship, of course, that lies at the heart of providing access to first-party data. So, how should both companies and how should their users or customers think about and approach this really critical decision?
That's a great question. I think it starts in, for me, as kind of both, an industry watcher and a consumer, for me, I think it starts with the opt-in and clarity of being very clear on what data you have, how you tend to use it, and trust starts there, by being open and saying, hey, we'd like to, capture this data from you, and here's how we're going to use it. And building on that, and really, it goes through the value chain of, we don't give it to third parties. This is our, developing a trusted platform partner, that has basically the same values or goals as you want to express to your customer, I think is an important part there. I think there's there's certainly opportunity to delve into ecosystems where you're not really sure, you know, who the partners are, who you're really working with, and that, you know, like I said, choosing the right partner to help you with the, you know, on this journey, you know, to better capture your customer journeys is an important step.
Cool. All right. Well, we've covered an enormous amount of ground today. I want to thank both of you, both Michael and Pavel, for joining us and for sharing your insights. You know, whether it's, you know, whether we're dealing with, you know, omnichannel, whether we're dealing with data intelligence or the actual experience that our customers and users are having, these are clearly areas that are being impacted by the security and privacy concerns that we're focusing on, and that will continue, I think, to motivate a lot of innovation and a lot of adaptability, right, from users and companies alike. And Nylas clearly sees a major role to play there as a second generation CPaaS vendor. So with thanks to you guys, and my thanks to all of the participants who joined us today. This will be available as a recording, and we'll also send you the white paper. But with that, I wish everybody a great afternoon and much thanks.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.